Folks, if you love the planet and appreciate fine wine, don't settle for ordinary Prosecco. Look for Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. This delicious sparkling wine comes from the, say it with me folks, Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG, the very heart of Prosecco country in northeastern Italy. And keep listening, friends, because later in this episode, we will learn about the diverse array of fine wines and cru-level vineyards of this tiny but outstanding growing region. This campaign was financed according to EU regulation number 1308/13.
Hey, Catherine.
Hey, yeah, what's up?
Why do refrigerators make good illusionists?
I have no idea.
Well, they don't move, but they're always running.
That's so interesting. Had to think about that one.
That one left you cold. I'm sorry. I can do better next time.
Freezing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Four Top. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in the wine world. I am your host, Catherine Cole.
And I'm your host, Martin Reyes, Master of Wine. And I'm excited to kick off our sustainability season with a scintillating conversation about energy efficiency and savings.
Woo!
This is the first of 6 sustainability themes that we've planned our programming around at Napa Rise. It's an annual sustainability summit that I co-founded along with Napa Green's executive director and CEO, Anna Britton.
Yes, and Martine, I know you've been working really hard on Napa Rise, and this has been all work and no pay. This has been a huge volunteer effort on your part.
Well, yeah, I might not be getting paid, but this episode is all about how wineries can get paid for doing the right thing, because saving energy is all about saving money.
This is true. It makes so much sense. And, we kicked off this season with Anna Britton telling us about her framework of the 6 pillars of sustainability. And she told us an anecdote, which we like to call anecdotes because we don't take anything too seriously at the Four Top, to illustrate each of the pillars. And her first anecdote was jaw-dropping. She was talking about how sustainability certifications can be super cost-effective, which is, I think, most winery owners don't realize. And she told us about a winery she had visited to do a sustainability audit. Do you remember that story, Martine?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. And so there was a winery that the team said, look, if you contact PG&E, fill out some paperwork, you can get your rate changed and shave off, $40,000 a year off their energy bill.
Wow.
And the winery dragged their heels around, doing the action items that they had been prescribed for. So then 3 years later, the new GM comes on board and then said, hey, how can we do about our energy bill? And Anna said, hey, did you fill out that paperwork 3 years ago? No, we didn't. Oh, well, you would have been able to have saved at this point now $120,000.
Oh, my goodness. That must have been so frustrating. But that is why I'm really excited about this episode, Martine, because saving money feels good. And we are here to talk about how much economic sense and how much sense in general energy efficiency makes with 2 real experts on the subject.
First up, I'm delighted to introduce Peter Yeung. He is a wine business consultant, author, and master of wine candidate with a background in luxury wine and sustainability. He was previously an executive for a clean technology company in Silicon Valley and was a management consultant with a focus on clean and renewable energy. He's also the co-host of an awesome podcast, XChateau Wine Podcast, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
And I want to jump in and say that Peter is a prince among podcasters because XChateau is also running sustainability coverage, also themed around Napa Rise and the 6 pillars. And I reached out to Peter and said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we were doing the same thing. And the XChateau content has already been coming out. And I wanted to apologize. And Peter said, what are you talking about? The more people talking about sustainability, the better. So Peter, thank you. We're just so gracious about it. And we're so delightful to have you on for this episode.
No, that's the whole point of all of it.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled also to introduce our guest with a sonorous English accent, Will Drayton, the Director of Technical Viticulture and Research Winemaking at Treasury Wine Estates, one of the world's largest wine companies. Will works on guiding Treasury Wine Estates' sustainability efforts across their global footprint of wineries and vineyards, and he's also on the leadership committee of the Sustainable Wine Roundtable. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be on. I love talking about this stuff. So can't wait to get stuck in.
Wonderful. Let's get started.
Excellent. So, Will, you're putting sustainability into practice in a meaningful way at Treasury Estates. Treasury Estates, of course, is this progressive wine company that owns several brands, including BV and Stag's Leap, among others. And so tell us about some of the impact your measures have had.
Thanks, Martin. I guess I start with the first most obvious thing is that this is an enormous subject, and I can go really into details about a ton of stuff. So pull me up at any point if you don't want to go into those details. But working for a big wine company, one with a global footprint, is really interesting because we have experiences that are sort of different in every single region around the world. Whether that's around climate change or whether that's around, how your electricity providers changing your rates. So we get a bunch of different input and we get to kind of boil that down to sort of best practices. And we also get to kind of test and learn in one winery, like Beringer, for instance, and then spread that everywhere. So our philosophy is very much around sharing the kind of discoveries we get. And that's not just within our own wines, but that's across anyone who wants to listen and collaborate with us. So just putting it out there that we're always very open to talk to anybody, to share these lessons, whether it's listening to this podcast or coming and seeing us for coffee and Napa. Always happy to chat. Energy efficiency goes across the gamut, right? So it can be as simple as a project we're doing right now to finally finish off those LED light bulb upgrades. Kind of boring. People have been changing out LED light bulbs in their houses for the last 10 years. Nothing new and exciting until you realize it's always hard to squeeze out that last few bits of your tasting room or, hard to reach fixtures in your barrel shay. And we're pushing that out. And we realize that even this year we'll be installing about another 3,600 LEDs. And we thought we were almost done, saving about 230 tons of carbon this year alone. That fits really well into one of our recent targets, which is to go 100% renewable electricity by 2024, which is a super steep curve, but I think a good ambitious target. And we've got a really good way of getting there. So happy to talk about that more.
Yeah. How can you get to 100% renewable in a year?
Yeah. So end of 2024 is our timeline. So it's still sharp. And this is a global goal. So this is not just at our US wineries, but it's a mixture of energy audits and efficiency. We want to bring down our overall footprint as much as can. That's where LEDs fit in. Although, to be honest, some of those things are going to take longer than that 2024 time period. So we'll be rolling that out over the next decade, or it'll probably be a journey that's never quite completed. A lot of that is on-site solar. So we've got solar going in at many locations. We've had solar on our US wineries for a long time. But in Australia, that wasn't always the way. So looking forward to rolling out a bunch more there. And then the other one is green RECs, or energy attribute certificates. This is where it gets super geeky. So I know this is a wine podcast. I won't bore you with the details, but you can make sure either by working with Anna Britton, for instance, at Napa Green and connecting with your local energy provider, you can go and buy green energy from the grid, and that can get you to the rest of the way. Or you can go and buy these green energy certificates, which is the same as what the power company would do, and make sure that everything you're bringing in has got a 0% carbon footprint. And when we looked at that takes our scope 1 and scope 2 footprint. About 75% of it is just our electricity. So we can cut out about 75% of our carbon footprint in one fell swoop by making that move.
Will, you said something briefly. People will keep hearing this more, scope 1, scope 2. And what does that mean? Scope 2 is the easiest one everyone thinks about when it comes to your electricity bill and your energy bill, right? Your utility. Scope 1 is the energy you use to create your product. So the tractors, the fertilizer on your property, the LED lights that you mentioned. I want to make sure that people understood what Scope 1 and Scope 2 are. So thanks for bringing that up, Will.
Will, are you doing any storage? Any energy storage?
Yeah, actually we are. And energy storage is another great link with efficiency. Sometimes this efficiency is not about like how much you're using in total. It's about when in the day you're using it. During harvest, all of that fruit comes in nice and cold in the morning and gets inoculated and the fermentation start popping. The energy required comes up just at the time that the sun starts going down. So if you're relying heavily on solar, at that point, your energy bill goes through the roof and your cooling demand is just as big as ever. So there's lots of clever ways to tie that together. Unfortunately, at the moment, I think battery storage it's got a long way to come. If you think about solar and how cheap that's got, relatively speaking, energy storage for batteries is tricky. What we do, we have one of the biggest solar hot water collectors in the wine industry on our bottling plant. And so we've cut out a huge amount of natural gas by swapping over to solar hot water. And we have our energy storage in a big hot water tank rather than a big battery. And that is actually incredibly efficient, much cheaper to store hot water than it is to go and mine all that lithium and all of those rare metals and put it into an expensive battery. So I think we have about 3 megawatts of storage in that battery, which is just a big insulated water tank. So, think about storage more than just batteries, but it could be blocks of ice to store your refrigeration in, or, water tanks to store your heat in.
Yeah, if we want to get really geeky in the electric side, what people mostly don't understand, because when you're in your home, you just use electricity and it's considered in kilowatt hours, right? How much energy you're using over the course of an hour. But for industrial and commercial and for the electric grid as a whole, when you're using your electricity matters a lot, right? Because of how solar is producing, but also how power plants run. And so usually for a commercial industrial facility like a winery, you have both how much energy you're using, so that volume of energy, like if you think of I drank a gallon of water, and then what your peak capacity is, or what's the max flow that you used, right? And there's a different charge for each, because the electric company, which I used to actually work for an electric company as well, has to build a power line into your facility to hit that peak hour. Otherwise, when you turn on all your stuff, you're gonna fry out. you're going to trip your breaker. So like people don't really think about that, but that's really important when it comes to like minimizing your electric footprint.
That's a great point, Peter, because a lot of what we've done is reshuffling the chairs of our energy uses. I don't know if you guys remember last year, but in California, we got really close to just a complete blackout situation. It was one of the hottest days of the year. We had this huge Labor Day heat wave come through. It was tough on the vineyards. It was tough on the wineries. And the governor of the state got on sending out emergency texts saying, please switch off everything you can right now. So that's a great way for wineries as well to be able to kind of save from that peak. We went on, flicked off all the switches to our wastewater ponds. Now you might think, well, what does that even do? But after refrigeration, probably wastewater ponds is the second biggest energy draw, especially during harvest when you've got all of those, all that fruit being made and all of that must, being treated and everything. So we switch those off for just like you'd switch off your air conditioning at home, but being able to monitor everything within our network was really important. So we could see, if we keep that on, we're gonna trip the breaker. Let's switch that off and help everyone come down below that magic line.
Yeah, we should be thinking about what's going to happen in the summer, especially if the heat spikes again, as well as if the rolling blackouts start happening again. And I'm just thinking we're going to be powerless to stop them.
Well, you were mentioning, Martine, about Anna's example of PG&E and them not doing it, but them having programs for doing it. So PG&E will have, and a lot of utilities around the world, especially in the US, will have programs that will help pay for LED lighting or reduce the cost of it. And then they have other programs for this purpose of reducing your peak demand, which they call demand response programs. And so they have both, where you as the customers are actually getting paid or incentivized to do a lot of these programs.
I think about what Will's doing, and Will, I bet you have a lot of capability for capturing real-time data and a lot of fancy technology that allows you to be more energy efficient. But if I'm a small winery and I cannot capture all my data and monitor it in a sophisticated way, Peter, I love your point that you can just reach out to PGE, reach out to your energy provider and see if they can do some of that work for you.
They will often do energy audits for customers of certain sizes and give you ideas and suggestions. And they've automated some of that too. Like even as a residential user, I get emails and other things saying, here are different ideas of how I can use less energy.
I just got an electric car not too long ago, and I was told by multiple EV owners to call up PG&E or call up MCE, and change my rate. And it took me a while. And I realized it's the same kind of psychology, which we're going to get into in the next bit, about just one simple phone call 20 minutes later ends up saving me $200, actually more than that if I do the math, $300 or $400 a year as a private consumer. And so if there's any like public service announcement element of this, is anyone who's listening right now, call up your utility and just check with them. It's shocking how supportive they are with getting you on the right plan, because they're incentivized too to shave off those heavy, high pressure peak hours, as Peter was mentioning. So make that call, make it today.
Another great example, Martine, is PG&E for our light bulb change. Again, seems so simple and so straightforward, but they're going to provide 0% financing for these light bulb changes. It's part of their service. And so as long as it's, you do the highest level of, efficiency, lighting quality, and the payback is within 6 years, they'll just allow you to roll that on your bill. So any winery can take advantage of that. You don't need to have any particular fancy monitoring. They'll come around, do the study, and help you put that together.
Yes.
I love how easy this is. I mean, and there are other simple things. I think we could probably generate a really long list. There are just so many simple things you could do that will save your business so much money and conserve energy. It's a no-brainer, right? Well, maybe on that note, we should transition to the second half of our conversation, which is, Martine, it's about what you were just talking about. How do we get the message across? How do we get people excited to just make these simple changes that will save them money and will save energy? And I wanted to turn to Peter as a winery consultant and an excellent communicator. Are wineries getting the message? Are you seeing that wineries are getting the message that energy efficiency actually makes a lot of economic sense? And where are some of the gaps in messaging here?
Well, I think this is similar, Catherine, to not just wineries and wine businesses, but all businesses. Being in the energy efficiency space is tough unless your business uses a ton of electricity, like you're a data center or a glass manufacturer or something like that, because it's not your business. You don't really care, right? It's something that's happening in the background that you just assume happens at a reasonable cost that you don't ever want to think about or care about or do anything about, right? It's a utility for a reason. And so, a wine business or a winery, their business is making great wine, selling it, and, counting the beans of how much they sold. Everything outside of that, they don't really think about, especially the small ones, too much, right? So I think probably what will happen is if we end up in a recession, if that happens with, interest rates going up and everything else. So it's interesting because sometimes people think about saving money less then, and they're thinking more about survival, but other times they might be looking at how to save money, and that could be part of it going in. And then to your point, just really helping people understand that this is really cost effective. It's saving you money net even after the investment, and you often can get incentives from PG&E or other utilities to make it happen.
It strikes me as this is one of those areas out of all the pillars, particularly, there's like no downside other than procrastination. Not only is it the right thing to do, not only do you do your part, right, of reducing your carbon footprint, burning less fossil fuels, but then it's like, and it saves you money. So for all these reasons, it's like a psychological question. And I'm grateful that we're getting into this subject now.
Well, Will might have some great examples, but some of it, to your point, Martine, is what is driving each individual's behavior. So if you talk about all those things, saving money might be the thing for some people. It might be the environmental impact for other people. It might be, just doing the right thing for someone else, right? And when all those explanations are there, then someone can grab onto the thing that resonates most with them and, use that as an excuse to even just turn off the lights at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or have it on a program that will turn it off. But have you seen, Will, in your, vast armies of people and facilities, different people resonate with different messages?
100%. Yeah. Talking about this stuff is the first step to making it really, clear, because people just don't think about it. They want to get on with their job. They want to go and do, what they were there to do: make wine, taste wine, sell wine, drive a tractor, whatever it is. So bringing it to the front in a way is really important. We talked a little bit about the metering and monitoring, and we're very lucky that we have an enormous amount of that stuff, so we can kind of identify areas for improvement. But in most cases, we just, we rely on PG&E or their consultants to come in and tell us, hey, you could do this better. Or Napa Green, come in and tell us how to do it better. A great example was just the other day, we had a group come by and have a look at something as easy as all the compressed air in your winery, right? So you probably don't go into a winery when it's quiet and there's no one else there very often. But if the compressor's switched off, or first of all, it'll click back on all the time, because there's leaks all over the place. Leaks there, you can't see them. And there's a gentle hissing, like most bottling lines and wineries, just going on. And that's just your money just evaporating out into the air while you're running your compressor when there's no one there. So we figured out that we could go and do some compressed air fixes, just wandering around with a little ultrasonic kind of meter, tightening things up, changing some fittings. The payback in that is like 3 months. So that's the easiest conversation you'll ever have with your boss or with your CFO or whoever you end up talking to. Not a big deal. Let's just go and take care of some of these things. But you never think about it. That hiss is always there. It's almost like white noise, and it's just easy to fade into the background. So really helps to have someone come and prompt you about these things from time to time.
Hey friends, if you are a bubblehead, not to be confused with a bobblehead like me, you know that the historic Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG is nothing like the rest of Prosecco country. It is home to Italy's first wine school ever, where Professor Federico Martinotti developed the famous closed tank method for making sparkling wine. And if you have visited this gorgeous gem of a growing zone, you know it is less than an hour's drive north of Venice, and it consists of picturesque foothills of the Italian Alps that have been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Region, boasting Europe's first wine road, the Prosecco Road, which weaves through mountains and farming villages, past vineyards, forests, rivers, and hillsides, revealing dramatic vistas. The steep hillsides here must be worked by hand, with each acre requiring a minimum of 600 to 800 hours of hand labor per year. And while the soil types, aspects, and microclimates are all favorable to sparkling wine production, within the DOCG there are 43 subzones designated as Rive. That's R-I-V-E. These are something like French Crus. They're the high-quality growing zones. And then there's one very special Grand Cru area. This is a particularly steep 1 square kilometer area of Valdobbiadene. This is called Cartizze, and that's spelled Cartizze. So if you are looking for a truly special Prosecco Superiore, look for those words Rive or Cartizze on the label. You'll also find a distinctive DOCG quality label on the neck of every bottle of Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. And this DOCG label will show the bottle's distinct number, which makes it unique and traceable. Also, on many of these wines, you will find a vintage year. That's right, a vintage year on Prosecco. Just look for that word millesimato, and you'll find that vintage year. Another thing that you can find on the back label of a wine from this wonderful region is an indication of the sugar content. And that can range from Brut Natur, that's obviously bone dry, to extra brut, to brut, extra dry, or dry. And if you know sparkling wines at all, you know how misleading these terms can be, because dry is sweeter than brut. But anyway, I have popped open a dry Prosecco Superiore. Right now, I have here Le Manzane Springo Bronze, or Springo Bronze in my terrible Italian accent, Rive di Manzana. So this is a wine from a Rive called Manzana that's in Conegliano, It's vintage 2022 and the label says dry, so I know I'm going to get a wine that's just a little bit sweet. But tasting it, it's not cloying at all. I'm getting a beautiful perfume of spring flowers and sweet herbs on the nose, maybe a little tarragon or mint even. And of course, that signature white peach on the palate that just lingers deliciously on the finish. This wine has terrific acidity and just leaves your mouth feeling clean and fresh. You know what? Dry is working for me right now, and I think I'm going to keep this wine open and enjoy it with brunch tomorrow. Thank you so much for learning with me. This campaign was financed according to EU regulation number 1308/13.
This conversation reminds me of the many conversations I've had with winery owners about just sustainability certification in general. And there's just for decades, there's been this thing where the winemaker says, I would do it, I'm practicing organic, but the paperwork, and it's always the paperwork. Like it's this like horrible thing. And that's an acceptable excuse for not being certified sustainable. And it's like, how hard is it to fill out a form? I mean, we all have to do our taxes. That's probably the worst possible paperwork anyone can face. It's really not that hard to just, like you're saying, make that phone call, fill out that form. That shouldn't be an excuse. And, we know that certified sustainable wineries, people really look for those products now, and that pays off. So, yeah.
Yeah. Will, you in particular, obviously with Treasury as a large family of wineries, and a corporate structure and partner businesses, is that part of your struggle, getting the message across? Are there other struggles? And Peter, I love your answer on this one too.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability has never really been a struggle. It's just not always received its fair share of the limelight. I think the struggle is probably more that when you talk to people about it, they're like, of course we should do that. Or probably we already are. But is it number 1, 2, or 3 on the list? And is it getting the attention it deserves? So we're lucky in that I feel it really is getting the attention it deserves. And things like this podcast, But the other piece is it's complicated. Like I could talk about, wastewater ponds or refrigeration management or LED light bulbs or scope 1 or scope 2. And all of this suddenly gets into a different language that feels like maybe I don't know what I'm doing here. I think that the important take home is that this stuff isn't that complicated. There's some really easy steps you can make, and there's always more steps you can make. And when we listed out all of the things that we thought we could be doing in an energy efficiency, carbon saving point of view, we realized like the first half of the list was going to keep us busy for the next 5 years, and they all paid for themselves, So there was a money incentive there, and we had plenty of things to worry about in the future that we will get to. But in the short term, fixing the easy stuff, whether that's solar or whether that's energy efficiency or any of the other things, there's plenty to keep us busy. So if everyone just made those steps, we'd be making huge progress.
I just want to go on a little tangent and say refrigeration. I've been to so many wineries where there's so much humming refrigeration equipment. And I wonder what's going to happen in the future with that. How can we make that more efficient? And then, part of me wants to say, why didn't you just build your winery underground to begin with?
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is, I think what we're doing today is the reminder. It's not the catalyst. Right? We're the reminder, say, this actually makes sense. You should think about doing it. You should keep doing it. And similar to Napa Rise, I thought it was called Napa Thrives. Maybe it changed its name.
The name changed,
okay.
Yes.
There we go. Napa Thrives, now Napa Rise. But there are some major catalysts that have been happening that have been bringing this into people's minds more frequently. One, all the hail and everything in Europe, but even in our hometowns and Napa and the Bay Area, fires. We had like 4 years of major fires in a row, stemming largely from climate change and also old electric equipment with heavy winds that once in 100-year things that, may have caused the fires. But I think that's catalyzing some people to actually take action in a bigger way to solve some of the bigger challenges that Will's talking about around packaging or around energy efficiency or different tools that they have, because they see they were just catalyzed by this very emotional event where, their house almost burned down. They almost died. I'm helping a brand in Napa that's starting. It's a brand new one whose main focus is around building a more sustainable pathway for wineries. And so like, I think there's major catalysts that happen that really bring it into people's lives. And then it's our jobs to keep reminding people, hey, did you change that light bulb and everything else? Because one of the things about climate change or sustainability, it's a lot of little things. There's no like big silver bullet, right? If we covered the world in solar and wind, like the electric system would not work. So like it would not, there's no one solution. There's a lot of little things that we all have to do.
Catherine and I have constantly been asking ourselves, how do we make climate action for lack of a better word, a clickbait subject, And you bring up, of course, that we are reminders, and that's good. But then the next step is like, if people are tuning in and then they tune out, or then they decide to maybe make a call, some of them don't do anything. They sort of go along with their lives, and they don't get as excited to see all the reminders. Or maybe they're bored, or maybe they feel like we're talking too much about it. So I feel like we want to get both of your takes as to what gets you most excited about this subject, and how do we transmit that excitement to the rest of the world?
And can I add, what is the title we're going to give this episode so everyone just smashes that play button?
Yeah.
We want to get people excited about this. So yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
For me, I think it's probably having kids, thinking about the future and the next generations and how we're going to leave the planet behind. I probably, didn't care as much when I didn't have a kid, and think about what she's going to be experiencing and, that. And obviously 4 years of pain and fires and barely able to breathe with an N95 mask were in your face. But now, it's been a couple of years and those are gone. And I think everything fades in people's minds until it happens again. And so you can't wait for that huge thing. And, children sort of remind you every day that there is a future.
Yeah.
Peter, I would definitely echo that. I'm looking after my boys and wondering what world we're living them. But in addition, the difficulty with the clickbait titles is they're nearly all doom and gloom, right? The world's going to be too hot you won't enjoy your wine anymore. It'll be all smoky. It'll be all disastrous. And I think what the world needs to know is there's an incredible amount of work going on. We can't be all Pollyanna-ish saying it's all going to be fine. We've got a huge journey to go on, and the world will not look the same in 50 years' time than it does right now. And so that in itself is a little scary. But I do worry that the clickbait that is most effective is those doom and gloom scenarios. And eventually people stop clicking on those because there's nothing in it for them. They they have the opposite effect. So whatever we can do to bring a little bit of sort of excitement, novelty, new ways of doing things, whether you guys had a Monarch tractor on there, but get ready for a revolution in the farming world in terms of electrification and getting rid of diesel, changing in growing practices that you see, blossoming biodiversity around you because of the changes in what we can do. Also, imagine like a winery that becomes that much quieter or darker at night, or that much more energy efficient, that much more of a better neighbor. All of those things will kind of infuse the winemaking team in terms of the joy they bring when they come to work. Our energy efficiency, our sustainability criteria has been an enormous recruiting asset to us. Like, people ask us all the time, "What are you actually doing? How can we come and work with you, or how can we find out more about what you're doing?" So I think there's a bunch of positive messages in there. I'm not a marketer. Like, I'm not going to give you a clickbait title that's really positive. I'm thinking about it right now, but I think we got to get away from that doom scrolling negativity, because I think it stops progress.
Well, I think we got to look at our audience too, Martin, because I saw some research at the Wine to Wine conference in Verona from VinePair, I believe, and they said consumers aren't interested in sustainability more. That's when they write about sustainability, it's one of their lowest read articles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As Catherine mentioned, we were putting out for XChateau a series on sustainability. It's actually doing pretty well relative to everything else. So I think it's a different audience, right? We're targeting more of a B2B audience, and businesses generally are more rational, usually, maybe not so much a wine, but in general. they're more rational. And so having more of the, the cost savings, the ROI conversations and all that, you're looking how to save. You're complaining about how you don't have enough people and help selling your wine, right? As you guys mentioned, well, you could have been saving 40 grand a year, if you had called PG&E. That's maybe half a person, or depending on how much you pay people, but like some amount of people that you could have then employed to help you sell more wine, right? So like businesses tend to be a little bit more rational. And so maybe it is thinking about things in that way to get businesses at least to start to do more of these things. Obviously, consumers need to do more as well, because as I said, it's everybody. But the clickbaity thing, I think, is more for consumers versus like people who are thinking with their business hats on think a little differently.
Peter, adding to that business piece, it's not just the winery manager who's thinking about those savings. It's also those gatekeepers. So we might not be getting those conversations from consumers directly, and they might turn off or they're not reading those articles. But you better bet that distributors are talking about it. When we sell wine into Europe, the monopolies are talking about it. They won't even let you in through the door. So that's also helping shape, tighten up the wine industry's approach to sustainability and getting the story together and making sure that it's not just a greenwashing top layer to things, but really diving into some of the details about what you're doing. What is your target on water? What is your target on CO2? And prove it to us rather than just talk about it in niceties.
So the lesson here is that clickbait works for certain audiences, your private individuals. So like the title that I had as a joke was "Don't fuck your children's future up." May work for certain audiences, but not for others for this particular episode.
Yeah, don't fuck your children's future up. Turn off your lights.
It's very pithy, gets right to the point.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, one thing everyone's children loves is dessert. So let's move on to our dessert course.
But hang on, before we get to the dessert course, I wanted to ask a riddle, which is how much do dead batteries cost? Nothing. They're free of charge.
Do you guys have sound effects? That definitely needs a badum.
Oh my goodness. Well, as I was saying, now it's time for our figurative dessert course, in which each of us shares a little something sweet that we have been enjoying this week. And Peter, what do you have queued up for dessert?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be related to wine, right? And wine is so much less sweet for me right now, as Martine probably had felt in the past some of this pain because I'm in the Master of Wine program and trying to study for the exam again. So there's like, wine is sort of like painful, but helping alleviate the pain, or at least the pain for my pocketbook, or preservation technologies like Repour and Corvin that make it so much easier than, when Martine, being ancient, probably 20 years ago, when he was doing all this, like probably had to open casks of wine to siphon out to pass his exam, right?
Oh yeah, the straw-lined Chianti bottles. That's how I passed.
Chianti is a good segue. So that was going to be my thought. I just got back from Tuscany, and it was phenomenal. And having lived most of my life in Napa Valley, Sonoma, Northern California, it was just a breath of fresh air to see a whole bunch of new techniques, a whole discussion around the use of Tuscan oak versus French oak or Hungarian oak or whatever. That leads to they make casks out of it, and they've got some real special projects that we're working on one of our Italian wineries, Gabbiano. It was cool. It opened my eyes and made me think, it's important to keep looking outside of what you know in the wine industry.
Will, you must have been smiling a lot when you looked out over the landscape of Tuscan vineyards. But you want to know why you were smiling the whole time?
Go on.
Because they're hill areas.
Yes, you're right.
All right, Martin, what's your dessert course? Or do you want to give us one more joke?
No. I think I overdid my quota. I need to be more energy efficient with these. So something that I've been that I just discovered recently is something called, for my personal in kitchen use, super cubes, like soup, and then ER, like super cubes. And the reason why I discovered them is because I'm trying to make my own milk, almond, oat, cashew milk, and trying to then, if you make a big batch, then you need to store it in the freezer or a portion in the fridge so that it doesn't all go bad. And also I make a lot of soups too. I have this killer mushroom soup. So what I discovered was this silicone, portion-friendly, stackable freezer food tray. It's like your upgraded version of your ice cube trays, but they're different sizes. And some of the sizes are really big. Like you can fit in a full cup into one cube. And they come like, you can stack them. And so you can actually fit substantial amount of liquid to freeze in your freezer without having the risk of glass breakage or without having to get plastic long-term storage, which is another thing some people want to avoid. So I discovered these super cubes and I am a big fan.
And cooking at home is more energy efficient. It's better for the environment than ordering takeout. Bravo.
Indeed.
I often recommend books. And so I recently just finished Our Game by John le Carré. And if you're looking for a good spy novel with Russian spies and arms dealers and some juicy political upheaval in the Caucasus, that's why I picked it up. But then I started reading, and it turned out the main character is running a winery in England the whole time that he's like dealing with all this intrigue. And so it's just kind of funny how it kind of goes back and forth, and suddenly he's grabbing his van or he's on the tractor in the vineyard. And so this whole plot is taking place while he's growing grapes and making wine. And I just really enjoyed that personally. John le Carré seemed to know what he was talking about. So kind of a fun read, Our Game.
Sounds like a multifarious character. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to our guests.
You can read about our guest, Will Drayton, at the Sustainable Wine Roundtable website at sustainablewine.co.uk.
Yes, and I am urging everyone to please head on over to our not competitor, but co-conspirator, XChateau at xchateau.com. That's the letter X, the word chateau.com, to learn more about Peter Yeung's excellent podcast and tune into his awesome coverage of sustainability in the wine industry. I'm so excited that we're both covering this, and it's really fun to kind of follow how we're taking different approaches. So everyone, please tune in and enjoy Peter's content.
And we've referenced this and with Napa Rise. So I would love everyone to check out the new website. It is risegreen.org, rise green, like the color green.org for Napa Rise. And you can find me there too, but I'm also at winewise.biz, winewise.biz, and Reyes Wine Group.
That's right. And you can find me, Catherine Cole, at catherinecole.com. But don't go there. Go to theforetop.org, where you can find our social media handles and let us know what you thought of this episode. And please support The Foretop by leaving us a rating on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple Podcasts.
Signing out from the sleepy little Napa Valley adjacent town of Benicia. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
And I'm signing out from Seattle this time, but I'm very grateful to you all for listening. And thanks.
Is it still
Peter,
high fiber and protein packed, or is it a different kind of? Is it low fiber? Is it carb packed? Is it fat packed? What's Seattle like compared to Portland?
Seattle is a little bit colder, a little bit rainier, but yeah, I would say it's just as protein packed and high fiber.
Excellent.
All right, thanks everyone for listening.
This has been the Foretop Podcast. Catherine Cole is our executive producer, Nick Toole is our producer, and I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor Michelle Richards, media and design manager Ruby Welkovich, and sales director Kristen Castagna. Please visit our website, theforetop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. If you have not already subscribed to The Foretop on iTunes or Spotify, please do so, and please leave us a rating. Every rating feeds the algorithm and helps new listeners find The Foretop. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.